Um, Hello and welcome everybody for joining. My name is Dr. Brian Aylward. I am the Senior Director of Academic Operations here at the University of Arizona Global Campus. I will be the host for the session today, When They Matter, They Succeed, Belonging and Inclusion. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded. We shared with the TLC related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you would like to use it, click the live transcription button at the bottom of the Zoom window. Now, I'm pleased to introduce you all to Nancy, Bill, and Oscar, who will be presenting today. Nancy DeVore is a business consultant and an associate faculty member here at the University of Arizona Global Campus with an interest in bridging the gap between online learning and real-life experience. She teaches industrial organizational psychology undergraduate programs. Nancy holds a PhD in general psychology from Capella University and specializes in applied psychology with a focus on inspired change and how chance encounters can move people through their higher purpose and unlock possibilities. Bill Davis has extensive experience in education in all aspects of business, consultant, management, leadership, sales, marketing, strategic planning, human resources, and organizational change. He has over 3 decades of experience working in the beverage industry, specifically in the PepsiCo system, a Fortune 500 company serving in front, middle management, and executive level leadership positions. Bill is a prac academic who successfully transitioned his highly successful career into academia. Oscar Garcia is a world-renowned consultant and corporate trainer with their culturally relevant message. He's an introvert turned international speaker and trainer. He recently presented as the keynote speaker at the Women's Leadership Conference in 2021 at the University of Arizona Global Campus, Forbes School of Business and Technology. As a first generation professional, he understands the experience of dual cultural identity as an asset and a liability. He's a chief empowerment officer at Aspiria Consulting, providing culturally relevant professionals development programs to over 33,000 professionals across 13 countries. Please post any questions in the chat and they will be answered at the end of the session. Over to you guys. Thanks.
It's a joy and an honor to present with Bill Davis and our special guest star, Oscar Garcia. Oh, sorry. When Bill, Oscar, and I met, we immediately realized we had some things in common, and we share a passion for others to be wildly successful and to find their higher place in life. And we'll break our presentation into 3 different parts: inclusive leadership, igniting students, and tales from the workplace. At the University of Arizona Global Campus, the mission is to provide high quality, accessible, affordable, innovative educational programs that meet the diverse needs of individuals pursuing advancement in their lives, professions, and communities. The focus of our presentation is on meeting diverse needs and pursuing advancement. Dr. Steinberg described how offering flexibility and access alone to online learners is not enough in yesterday's keynote address. We also need empathy and advocacy. And Terry Anderson is an expert on how people learn online and tells us that it doesn't matter how effective the online materials are. If students are not motivated, they will not learn. If you're teaching, you might be wondering, I understand my subject pretty well that I'm teaching, and I think I know what motivates my students, but not all my students seem highly motivated. So you might wonder, am I a teacher? Am I a coach? Am I a therapist? I think the correct answer is I'm a human being, and I can bring more human-centered encounters to what I do. There's a way to make small adjustments that give big results, and a human-centered approach can facilitate transformational learning. For example, I like to use the phrase throw a party to remind me of the level of enthusiasm I want to bring to a student anytime they email me. I reply as if they're the most important person on earth, because in that moment they are. But I was going to do a poll, but I'm going to keep moving on with the presentation. And one of the ways to live the mission statement is to adopt an inclusive leadership style. Inclusive leadership supports higher order human purpose, which means I can learn as much, if not more, from my students as they learn from me. Inclusive leaders help people find their higher human purpose. They don't just focus on the differences, they focus on similarities and possibilities. They help people have greater self-acceptance and higher purpose by using small efforts that get big results. And inclusiveness is just defined as creating an inviting environment for people of all backgrounds for equal opportunity for success in a way that works for them. But an even better definition is to allow people to have the same shot at success, but for different people to actually create different definitions of success. In other words, inclusive leaders let the followers or learners decide what defines their own success. In science, just making and achieving a goal is called hedonic. For example, if I get the degree, then I'll be happy. But realizing that you are the goal is called eudaimonic. The degree, for example, is just the expected outcome of who I am and who I can continue to be. When someone becomes the goal with eudaimonic experience, they have self-acceptance, autonomy, purpose in life, positive relationships, and personal growth. You don't just wake up one morning and you're an inclusive leader. It takes time to develop inclusive and culturally aware skills. And so I can track where I am on a success map. For example, Bennett describes that inclusive leadership can be tracked in 5 stages, ranging from low to high awareness. The first level is resistance. That would just be feeling threatened and just avoiding differences. Minimizing differences is the second stage. That's where you start to realize that culture is really universal. Acceptance is the third stage, where you have more curiosity and respect, and you start to change your behavior. Adaptation is the fourth level, where we accept differences, and integration is the fifth level, top of the scale, for multicultural views and having inclusive thinking and behavior. So I want to share a couple of real life examples of how students have taught me the experience of inclusive leadership. The culture of care is supporting students, but it is also about the willingness to be a student of life while teaching. The learning is not just from faculty to students, it also comes from student to faculty. The following 2 case studies are used by permission from actual students from 2 different courses over the last couple months, and I've omitted their names. The courses I teach are 5 weeks long. Here are some of the timeline events. In week 1, students have a chance to introduce themselves and let us know who they are and what their major is. The best point in the course to spend some extra time is during the introductions. For example, this student shared that they are Mexican American, live near the border of Mexico and California, and work in an industrial transportation industry. So I take note of that and I continue through each week with that awareness. By week 3, the student shares more about wanting to advance their position and to gain mentoring. They also share that they're bilingual and fluent in Spanish. They also use Spanglish, which is a combination of English-Spanish. I can relate to that because my own extended family and I use Spanglish. But by week 5, the student opens up even more about their life. Their parents had isolated them from social interaction with other children when they grew up, and they ended up growing up feeling a little different. They had read and related to the book The Elephant Man, and the book titled La Carcajada de El Gato, The Laughter of the Cat, and the Mexican cinema derived from that book called The Castle of Purity, both about negative effects of family isolation. I could relate because I know a little bit about Mexican cinema because I had done my dissertation on how people are affected by the films they watch. So in week 5, the student let us know in the dissertation, or I mean in the discussion, that he enjoyed connecting, he felt more confident, more different, and felt very different from when he was feeling isolated and different that he had described earlier. In student example 2, the student shared in the intro that they were married with 2 children. They didn't like making introductions in the course room because they felt behind and compared themselves to other students negatively. And they were also looking to do stand-up comedy and shared one of the videos in their act from one of their acts. And in the intro, the video gave me a distinct idea of who the student was. I noticed in week 2 that they were having trouble passing a quiz. And on using the American Psychological Association writing style, they needed to pass the quiz to advance to the next week. Until the quiz is passed, week 3 remains locked. So I contacted them to see if I could help. And they stated, you know, the more I try, the more confused I get. So I said, hey, let's set up a video call. And they said, oh, I don't have enough Wi-Fi bandwidth to do that. So I said, okay, let me review your quiz and send you some ideas of how to get the answers right that you missed. And then you can look it over and go back in and retake the quiz. So they ended up retaking it 6 times, but they passed. And it felt so good to help them not to give up or believe that they can't. So the student let me know that that they passed and that they appreciated the explanations of why learning this style of writing is so important for their degree program. So in summary, motivation is the key to student success. Inclusive leadership is about helping students not only to make the goal, but also be the goal. It can help when I know where I am on the leadership map. That way I know what I need to work on and what I've accomplished. So it'll help for me to be open, see what I can learn from other students or followers. And since motivation is such a big deal with success, coming up next is Bill Davis on how to ignite students.
Thank you, Nancy. And then next slide, please. Okay, next slide. All right, let's talk a second here. I'm going to be good, brief, and I'm going to be gone, but I want to make a couple points about these particular slides because they're very important. You know, Nancy brings up great points. You can feel her passion. You can see her engagement. The students matter to Nancy. She knows what her purpose is. She knows she's an inclusive leader and she's involving everyone. And, you know, when we are working with students, we want to be aware of their emotions, their real or perceived apprehensions. We want to lead with EQ. We want to be socially aware. We want to be self-aware. The behaviors and the signals we send, our verbal, nonverbal, paraverbal communication. We want to adjust to our audience. You know, we want to relationship manage and then we want to self-manage. So you do those things right. Remember, they're watching. I always would say that to students, you know, that students don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. So they have to feel you too, and you have to feel that empathy, but you got to be aware of your audience and your students, and you want to relate and find that common ground. Next slide, please. Okay, trust. Let me tell you, trust is 5 dimensions of trust. I've been teaching this my whole career. I believe it. Trust is built a piece at a time and over time. And in a classroom, you're building that trust, right? It's about being honest. It's about showing your competence, leading with EQ, understanding people's emotions, lead with empathy and act with compassion. You know, you start to build trust because they have good experiences with you and you build it over time. And it's also about your expertise. It's about your competence. It's about caring. It's about likability, right? If they feel comfortable, you're going to continue to expand their comfort zone. So remember, you're working to build trust. And here's a couple great quotes from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, but people will never forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel, right? I have to tell you, you're going to see an outstanding presenter following me, Oscar Garcia, and I connected with him immediately when I saw him speaking to CWL. He made me feel that he has passion, he cares, he has a purposeful goal. I followed, I connected. And that's really what we want to do in a classroom too, because students don't care how much you know. This is what a student told me one time, gave me a plaque. Till they know how much you care. Okay, that came from one of my students on ground in Clinton, Iowa. Next slide, please. Next slide, Nancy. If that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's not advancing.
Okay, well then we're gonna. Well, there we go.
Oh, okay.
Make them feel they matter, right? Mattering theory. Let's talk a little bit about mattering theory real quick. Next slide, please. 4 components to it. Give students attention. If you remember these components, AIED, right? Attention. Okay, give the students a feeling, a sense of belonging. Make sure you deliver quality, innovation, find new and better ways to reach them, show caring. Supportive and caring learning environment. Create the classroom culture. Importance, they do matter. So prioritize high quality teacher-student relationships. So important, student faculty. You have to engage. You have to help them in the classroom, outside the classroom. Be sensitive to their needs and emotions. You know, remember, their emotions affect their motivation. Their motivation affects their behavior. Their behavior drives their performance. That isn't just coming from me. That's coming from our Management 425 Leadership and Motivation course. But those are things that matter. Show genuine and honest interest in their success. Be sincere. You know, be honest. Ego extension. Make a plan to check in students and build their confidence. Honest and supportive assignment feedback. And you can deliver that in a good way. It doesn't have to be a negative tone, but connect and then teach. You know, like Barbara Rogoff says, I do, we do, you do, and move them through that learning continuum. And then finally, dependence. Make sure students feel heard and follow through and close the loop. You know, we closed the loop here after months and months of putting this research together and so forth. And we finally have come to fruition here, which I'm darn proud. So next slide. So I just want to say, continue to ignite students, transcend negative beliefs. You know, if they've got the wrong attitude, I have to tell you, Dr. Laura Palmer Noonan instilled something in me that says 5 attributes for success. You ready for them? Attitude, attitude, attitude. Make them have a positive attitude. Help them. Positive experiences of belonging. You belong here. I'm here for you. We're in this together. Reduce feelings of being unacceptable. Build that confidence. Lead and lift. Equip them for success and nurture them in their transformation. So next slide. It's my honor and great pleasure to introduce Oscar Garcia. Oscar, thank you for being here.
Oh, no, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Nancy. Hello, everyone from the San Francisco Bay Area. So if we can go to the next slide. So I want to talk about, I'll come to you from a first generation student, professional perspective, because that's who I am. I am the only one in my family, 10 siblings, that graduated from college. My dad had a first grade education, my mother middle school education. They didn't speak English. The minute I learned how to speak English, which was in kindergarten, I became their translator until they passed away. If we can go to the next slide. And, you know, when I look back at my first gen experience, and I'm still living it, it's something that I'm going to live until, you know, I'm 6 feet under. It's an experience where there is a dual cultural identity, where sometimes it has been an asset and a liability. And I will tell you, as a first generation professional, actually, I have felt, okay, more that of being a liability, because typically in our mainstream society, we look at first gen, it tends to have a negative connotation. That label tends to have a negative connotation. When we think of first gen, we think of low income, immigrant, right? English as a second language, et cetera, and so forth. But here's the thing, I worked in the tech industry, and I remember one day being in a company meeting, and the vice president of sales is up in front and telling us how our product, our service was different from the competition, the differentiators. And I kept hearing that, how we're different, not just in that particular startup, but really with any company. What's our differentiator? What's the difference between Pepsi and Coke, right? And all of a sudden, my light bulb, because I'm an introvert. I know many of you don't believe this, okay, but I'm a natural personality introvert. I'm constantly talking to myself. And all of a sudden, I start reflecting on my past experience. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my entire life, I have been told that I'm different, that I'm a minority, low income, etc. And all of a sudden, in the business world, being different is a positive. I'm like, hallelujah! I have been bred to succeed, and I have embraced, being first generation. But at the same time, I also reflected back on our history books, and I thought about Neil Armstrong when I read about him setting foot on the moon, being the first human. And in our history books, we refer to Neil Armstrong as a pioneer. We never call him a first generation moonlander. I'm like, that's part of this whole dual cultural identity as asset and liability. And I know people like Bill, Nancy, and many of you here are doing what you can to change that narrative. But I'm going to tell you on a personal level, I'm not going to wait for any of you to change the narrative, because I'm going to change it myself, and I have. Next slide, please. Now, here's some things that I want to share with you that you can do to help change this narrative and create this more inclusive, belonging environment leadership. Number one is initiate some outreach, and Bill and Nancy touched upon this. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, Oscar, but I already am initiating outreach. What I want you to think is your outreach effective? Is it working? Because I will share something with you. A few years back, about 15 years ago, I and my family and some friends rallied parents to go to school board meetings because they were looking to close one of the schools that was about 90% Latino students. And hardly any parents were attending the school board meetings. The Spanish-speaking parents completely disenfranchised. And I remember speaking to the superintendent saying, are you not notifying parents about school board meetings? And the superintendent said, yes, we are sending notes with all the students. I said, well, obviously it's not working. What I did is I went to the 2 Catholic churches in my city, and I asked the priest if he would give me 5 minutes at the end of mass to invite parents to a meeting and let them know what was going on. The last 2 school board meetings, it was standing room only, over 300 parents. Again, initiate an effective outreach. Number 2, we need to listen more. Now, we're in a position where typically we are the ones that are mentoring and advising the students, right? That's our role. But what I want you to think about is listen to what they're not saying. Did you notice the example that Nancy gave at the beginning about how the student began to open up more and more over time? Also, be that connector. There's many ways that we can be a connector, but one of the ways, and Bill is so amazing, is use the tools. These young generations are on social media. I'm 53 years old. Do not give me the excuse that you are not techie, all right? Like, at what point do I need to be like 100 years old, and then still be like, on social media or whatever the latest great, maybe it'd be artificial intelligence back then, okay? But use the tools to connect. Listen, I could care less about LinkedIn, but I use LinkedIn because it's a way to connect with amazing people like Bill and Nancy, et cetera, and so forth, but also to serve those students, to be that connector. Number 4, celebrate those wins, okay? Celebrate those wins. And lastly, I think one of the most important things, share your story. One of the ways, if you think back at those people that we are closest to, that relationship, is at some point we shared some vulnerability, some trials and tribulations that we've been through. I shared some with Bill. Bill and I haven't even met in person. He's like my virtual buddy over here. Same thing with Nancy. All right. Not that too long ago, I shared some stuff personally that was going on with my health, with Bill, and so forth. But what happens when we are vulnerable and share and authentic, we develop a stronger, meaningful relationship with folks. And I know all this, like, again, Nancy said, it is a process. I'm not here to tell you to jump off, the cliff or whatever, but take some baby steps, okay? Do I still have a few minutes here, or Bill
Absolutely.
or Nancy? I'm not sure.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
All right. Is there any way that I can share my screen just for a quick second here? Is it possible? I want to share something here that I have.
So Shauna, can
Yes.
you allow him to
Absolutely.
share?
Nancy, if you just want to stop sharing, Oscar, you should have permissions to go ahead and share.
Okay. I want to leave you with this here, everyone here. And I want to leave you with this. This is something that I came up with because I'm all about changing the narrative. And I created what I call the first gen credo. F stands for fear. As a first gen professional student, we're the first in a family to do many things. We experience fear, yet we embrace it. I do not subscribe to the be fearless. No, listen, as an introvert, and I've done gazillion talks, I still get butterflies. I have butterflies right now, but I've learned how to control those butterflies. Next, I, for initiative. We act on opportunities in spite of what others do or don't do. R is for resilient. We get up more times than we fall. I don't care if you failed. Our education system, penalizes us for getting F, but life rewards us for getting back up. S is for servant attitude. We lead with our heart. One of the reasons why I also was attracted to Bill, because this gentleman here has worked in corporate America and now, education system, but he still wears his heart on his sleeve. Are we going to sometimes get taken advantage of? Yes, but you know what? I give unconditionally. P for tenacity. We're relentless in our pursuit of our dreams. G stands for gratitude. We don't forget where we come from, and we are grateful for everyone's support. E is for empower others. We have one hand up, one hand down to bring others along. Again, I do not subscribe to this, I have my pie and I'm happy with it. No, I'm a baker. N is for no. Stands for no. No is yes. Our ears hear no, but our heart says, yes, I can. So junior year in high school, my counselor told me, don't apply to UC Berkeley, Oscar, because you don't have the grades or SAT scores. And you know what? I heard her, but my heart said, Oscar, apply. And guess who accepted me? And guess where I graduated from? UC Berkeley. So I leave you folks with this first gen credo. Nancy and Bill, thank you. And all of you, thank you for this opportunity to share something here very brief with all of you. And I don't know if we have some time for some questions.
You just inspired me again, Oscar. Thank you. Thank you. Any
Bill.
questions? That was just so enlightening, so enlightening.
Thank you so much, Oscar.
Thank you, Nancy.
Does anybody have any questions they want to ask or put any questions in the chat?
The one comment I'd like to make, though, is Oscar Garcia lives his values. He's authentic and genuine. What you see is what you get. And I've followed you on social media, and just amazing, just amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Nancy. Everyone, I just in the chat, I dropped my LinkedIn URL if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, I'm very active there, sharing a lot of content.
Yeah, Oscar, you're a wealth of information. So I'm glad that you listed your LinkedIn link in there.
Perfect. Well, nobody has.
Here's one from, is it Tamika? Tamika, is the first generation credo an internal mantra, or is it okay for us to sign and embrace that credo? Tamika, as we say in Spanish, mi casa es tu casa. You know what? Take it, my friend. Share it. Spread it. Use it.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Nancy, Bill, Oscar. That was fantastic. And thank you to the audience for joining us today and participating in today's session. We encourage you to attend the last keynote presentation and closing remarks here coming up in an hour. And as always, you can locate information on all the remaining and upcoming presentations through the Whova app. So enjoy the rest of TLC, everyone.